In its efforts to reduce the number of out-of-school children, the Lagos State Universal Basic Education Board has re-enrolled more than 6,000 students in schools. According to the chairman of the board, Wahab Alawiye King, Nigeria has the highest out-of-school children. Therefore, SUBEB has designed Project Zero in an attempt to reduce the population of children that are not in school. She notes that SUBEB is working with other stakeholders, the School-Based Management Committee, the Parents Forum, and other educational inclined individuals and organizations to tackle the menace. Well, now we have joining us in the studio to discuss this development, Shijuade Idowu-Tiamiya, the permanent board member of the Lagos State Universal Basic Education Board, and Danladi Verhagen, a board member of the Verod Foundation and managing partner at Verod Capital. Welcome to Newsday, and thank you both for joining the program. Let's start with you, Shijuade. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
There's a lot of out-of-school kids. It is clearly a problem, and you all have developed solutions to rectify this huge gap that we have in the city. Can you talk to us more about how the project has been and how you were able to get these school children back to school?
Well, Project Zero is an initiative designed by Lagos State to tackle the menace of out-of-school children. And this project has been deployed by members of the community. And when I mean members of the community, these are school-based management committee. They are like an advanced version of what we used to have, the Parent Teachers Association. Because there is no one-size-fits-all strategy, and each community has its own peculiarity, there is need to bring it down to the people. Cascade the strategy down such that apart from what we are handing over, kitting the children, the community are the one in charge of picking these children because they know the children, they know their stories, they live among that community and they're able to pick the children. As soon as a child is picked, the child is mapped to the very nearest primary school to that child, and that child is kitted by the Lagos State Universal Basic Education Board. And when I mean kitted, from the uniform to the bag to the writing material to the school center, everything the child needs to return to school is provided by the Lagos State Universal Basic Education Board. And as you know, we have supported more than 6,000 children back to school.
So my next question goes to you, Danladi. I'd like to know what role Verod has been playing, in this, in bringing this Project Zero initiative, into becoming a success.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. It's definitely an honor to be here. Verod just played a really minor role. We've just contributed financially to what we think is a really, really inspiring and necessary program. I think we got in touch with the program last year, and as we all know, because of the pandemic, we had lots of kids who did not return to school, and we just have a very soft spot for kids who we think need to be educated, and this was a worthwhile program that our foundation decided to support.
All right, let me get back to you, Ms. Tiamiya. You just mentioned something very critical, COVID-19.
Yes.
And certainly it's still with us, and we're still feeling the impact.
Yes.
And although economies and probably the society has opened up, but there's still that gap. How long would it take for us to be able to fill that particular gap? How long do you think it would take to bridge that gap of out-of-school people and get them back into school?
To be honest with you, this is something that would have to be a continuous process. There is a lot of, it's not just COVID. Children are just not out of school because of COVID. COVID is one factor, but there are other factors. You would agree with me that the migration rate to Lagos State is really, really high. And as people come into Lagos State, they come in with their children. And we are continuing to mop up as we're going on. It's not going to be, I cannot tell you, we're going to do this within 3 months, 5 months. It has to be continuous because people are coming in on a day-to-day basis.
And, okay, let me ask you, Danladi, it seems that there's with these kinds of situations, with these kinds of initiatives, there needs to be a little bit of a long-term because it's one thing to get the kids into school, it's another thing to keep them in school. So I just wanted to discuss maybe the thought process around that, and also, the thought process around keeping them in school and the funding for doing that, because it will be quite costly.
Great question, thank you. And it really requires a bit of a comprehensive solution. I think most importantly, though, it requires all of us putting our hands in and contributing to this massive need that we have. Nigeria, as I understand it, has close to 10 million kids who might be out of school. 1/3 of kids in Nigeria are out of school today, and 20% of the world's children who are out of school are in our country. This is really a bleak scenario for the future, and one that we all need to contribute towards. Right, getting kids in school, and like you rightly said, keeping them in school just ensures that people can have better paying jobs in the future. These kids are consumers of the future. So I mean, all of our businesses also rely on ensuring that we're well educated, and there's no country that survives without, education being the bedrock of this. So now, to answer your question specifically, in addition to getting getting kids in schools, we also need to focus on programs that keep kids in schools, that ensures they graduate, that ensures that they keep on going, that they go to universities. I'll give another example. We support another school actually closer to us in Victoria Island. And we have a mentorship program there. And I think this is an important point because it goes to show that it's not just about the financial side. Time sometimes is worth a lot more. So we support a school in Victoria Island. It's a public school. About 12 of the kids were mentored by colleagues of mine in my office. These are 12 out of 250 kids that graduated, and 12 out of 250 kids in the school. In that graduating class of 250 children, only 6 of them went to university, and the 6 were amongst the 12 that we mentored. And in mentoring them, we're just meeting with these kids once a week, right, or once a month sometimes, and just giving them advice, counseling them, encouraging them to stay in school, encouraging them to apply to programs. And it was not necessarily that we even paid for their university education. So it's not a financial intervention in that case. Just an example of just mentorship, providing them with inspiration, and again, those are the kids that actually end up going to university, right? So there's a real comprehensive, we have to look at this thing comprehensively, and I think most importantly is like the private sector needs to partner with the government in whichever area you feel led or motivated, just to contribute to make basically education a reality for everyone in Nigeria.
Now, Shijuade, there's this, I'd like to call it an assumption, that students who go to public school, they're kind of like second class to those who go to private schools. So you see a lot of parents, struggling to send their children to private schools, even though they're not financially buoyant. So how do you alleviate the fears of parents who would not want to send their children to public schools, even though it's a huge task keeping them in private schools?
Well, there are 2 things that needs to happen for learning to take place. There has to be a teacher, and there has to be a student who are willing to learn. With this present administration, we have ensured that we have this too, that our teachers are always in class through electronic. We ensure that we monitor that our teachers are in class through a program called EcoExcel. Electronically, all our teachers are monitored. The fear of parents is my child learning? So if a teacher is in class and your child is there, we can guarantee you that knowledge is being transferred. Because in all our school, we have qualified teachers. We do not, in some of these low-cost private schools, like you rightly call them, the teachers are not necessarily qualified. They're school sats. But in our schools, in government schools, we have BSc holders, master's holders, and the least you find in our schools are NCE holders. And they are the people transferring this knowledge. And these are people who are trained to transfer this knowledge, except that is a status thing. I went to a private school, a public school all my life, and I turned out this way. And I can say that for people that are in their 40, 45, 50s, most of them attend public schools, and they are where they are. If it is not a status thing, I don't know why any parent wouldn't want to put their child in a public school if they can afford a private school. The thing is, learning is happening both ways.
Now, okay, I'll piggyback on what Mrs. Tiamiya just said, and I'll talk to you, Danladi. And the question is this, because a lot of people have questioned the veracity of education being applicable here in the 21st century. And that is why people, of course, very misguided, will say that education sometimes is a farce, but which is not true. But how do you tailor education to meet the society we are today? Because the truth is this society has actually gone probably, we are talking about Gen Z right now, and we still have schools that probably try to teach computer literacy with blackboards. And you ask the question, people go to school for the sake of going to school, come out and become functional illiterates.
Yeah, so I agree with that. And again, it's just another very good question. I think, first of all, I'm not an expert on this at all, right? It's actually not my day job. I just I have a heart for this. So I'm just speaking again based on my limited knowledge about this. But I think a couple of things. One is, the foundations of literacy and understanding math is, that leads to transferable skills. If you're talking about kids being able to code and program later on in life, you need to understand math to program. You need to understand, you need to be literate to be able to communicate, right? It's not the ability. It's funny, the other day I was looking at my daughter's homework and she was asking me about the liver and the bile and what the liver does and the bile does. And I had no clue whatsoever. So it's obviously not the functional knowledge of what we learned since she's in primary 4, what you learned in primary 4. I don't remember anything from primary 4. But does that mean that what she's learning is going to be useless in life? No. School teaches you, once you get the basics, it teaches you a way of processing information. It teaches you curiosity. It teaches you, how to break down complex problems, hopefully, into subparts. Think of where to research, or how to get information and put things back together and get the answers. So I think we can focus on some of these areas that are just sort of the basic building blocks to creating, passionate, innovative, functioning members of society going forward. In addition, you're right, in the digital age, you need to figure out how to incorporate new forms of learning and how to incorporate technology in very cheap ways. And there are technologies that have been deployed in other markets. And I think, those who know more about this subject need to help us figure out how we can, bridge the chasm from where we are today in terms of our educational system and how we deliver education to, what really create workers of the future.
Well, that was a really amazing discussion we had. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about this initiative, Danladi. And also, Shijuade, thank you so much for coming in. And we wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you.